إليهم فعل الخيرات وإقام الصلاة وإيتاء الزكاة وكانوا لنا عابدين. ولوطا آتيناه حكما وعلما ونجيناه من القرية التي كانت تعمل الخبائث إنهم كانوا قوم سوء فاسقين. وأدخلناه في رحمتنا إنه من الصالحين. ونوحا إذ نادى من قبل فاستجبنا له فنجيناه وأهله من الكرب العظيم. ونصرناه من القوم الذين كذبوا بآياتنا إنهم كانوا قوم سوء فأغرقناهم أجمعين. وداود وسليمان إذ يحكمان في الحرث إذ نفشت فيه غنم القوم وكنا لحكمهم شاهدين. ففحمناها سليمان وكلا آتينا حكما وعلما وسخرنا مع داود الجبال يسبحن والطير وكنا فاعلين. صدق الله العلي العظيم.
Thank you, Fiza. Brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum. Hope you all are doing well. First and foremost, welcome to our second week of our English programs here at Al-Mahdi Center. This week we are honored with the presence of Sheikh Miqdad Rajabali, who is visiting us from London in UK. So just have a quick bio for him, just because it's his first time here at Al-Mahdi Center. So Sheikh Miqdad Rajabali grew up in Africa and completed his academic pursuits in the United Kingdom at the esteemed University of Southampton. There he obtained a bachelor's degree in pharmacology, followed by an MPhil in cancer research. In 2011, he transitioned to the Hausa, where he remains dedicated to his ongoing studies. Recently, he authored his master's thesis, showcasing his expertise in the field. Additionally, Sheikh Miqdad Rajabali contributes his knowledge and expertise to the Babur Rida Institute, an esteemed Hausa and educational institute offering courses in English. As a father of 4 children, he balances his professional and academic pursuits with family responsibilities. He mentioned that his hobby is mountain climbing, so I thought that was a cool fact to share with you all. And the topic for his 3 nights over here, from tonight all the way till Saturday night, will be role modeling, a shortcut towards self-development. So Sheikh, we are honored to be able to host you these nights, and inshallah let's invite him up with a loud salawat. Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين بارئ الخلائق أجمعين باعث الأنبياء والمرسلين ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين حبيب إله العالمين أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين لا سيما بقية الله في الأرضين واللعن الدائم على أعدائهم أجمعين. أما بعد فقد قال الله عز وجل في كتابه الكريم أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم لقد كان لكم في رسول الله أسوة حسنة لمن كان يرجو الله واليوم الآخر وذكر الله كثيرا آمنا بالله وصدق الله العلي العظيم صلوات اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. My respected brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Thank you very much for this introduction. The honor and pleasure is mine to be over here. I'm really happy and grateful for the invitation to be with you inshallah for the next 3 nights. The topic that I'd like to share and discuss over the next 3 nights inshallah is a very important and very relevant topic for all of us. Role models are people that we look up to, people that we have a lot of respect for, people that we want to be like, people that we imitate and emulate in our lives. And we find that they play a role in our lives in directing us, in motivating us, in opening the door for us to reach an important level of success. And so we shouldn't take lightly the impact that role models have on us. And this is not just relevant for children, because very often when we talk about role models, we talk of role models for youths and for children. And we say children should have good role models, Ronaldo and Messi and over here and James LeBron and other celebrities and sports player role models for our children, and sometimes we get concerned. But role models for adults and role models for anyone will have an impact in our lives, will have an impact in how successful we are and where we can attain our growth and our spiritual growth. And so it's a very important topic for us to look into. So what I'm going to do today is talk about 6 impacts of role models, 6 areas of our lives where role models really have an impact, just to see how important this topic is. And then inshallah we'll look at the Holy Quran, a story from the Holy Quran, to discuss the topic of role model, and inshallah carry on inshallah for the next sessions. So 6 very important aspects and places in our lives where role model are very important. The first one is role models define for us a goal. Role models clarify for us where we want to be. Because role models are the embodiment of a success that we want to achieve, right? You take, for example, for a businessman, he looks at Elon Musk, for example, and Elon Musk is a role model. This is where I want to be, right? So Elon Musk becomes a goal. Who clarified for me in my life what I want to achieve as a goal was a personality by the name of Elon Musk, a role model, right? So role models have this ability and this very, very important impact in our lives, that they clarify for us, they make it clear, and they bring to our lives an objective, a goal. People who don't have an objective in life, people who don't have a purpose in life, they usually don't have a role model. And on the flip side, people who have a role model, you find that they have a clear objective of where they're going. They know what they're doing in life. And if you ask them, what drives you, what is that objective that you want to achieve, they can tell you the name of a person. So this is what I want to be like. So the first impact is role models clarify for us the objective of our life, purpose. The second thing is that not only do role models define for us the purpose of our life, but they also motivate us to achieve it. So whenever we know that there's a person that we have a lot of respect for, has achieved a level of success, this motivates us to go and achieve it as well. We feel that if they've done it, why can't I? We feel a sense of inspiration, a sense of wanting to be like them, a driving force within us towards that person. It's very interesting when you look at different role models that we have out there. Take, for example, Michelle Obama. Right? Michelle Obama published her biography in 2018. It was the most sold copy book, right, of the year 2018, and achieved that record in 15 days. People were buying her book, and she became a role model for many people. And when you look at quotes of, there was a study done with quotes of people who look up to her, right? They would say that, I feel like I can accomplish things when I think about her. That's a 17-year-old talking, right? Role model gives us this motivation, especially when role models are from the community, right? Imagine if from Al-Mahdi Center in Pickering, you have one of our community members who achieves something, right? We all feel like if they can, I can too, right? If they were to achieve, I don't know, win the tennis slam, for example, right? The US slam, for example, in tennis. You feel like if he can, I can too. So it drives us and motivates us and a driving factor for us to achieve success. So one is that it defines, role models define for us a goal. 2, role models bring about motivation for us to achieve that goal. Number 3, role models have an impact in what we like and dislike. And that's really fascinating. You find that the things that we like and dislike, even to small things like food, or for example, the way we dress, the way we like to comb our hair, is very much dependent on who we want to imitate. And this starts from childhood. You find little kids playing mom and dad, and you ask them, what are you playing? They say, I'm playing mom and dad. And they'll be copying their own mom and copying their own dad. And they grow up, right? And they start combing their hair in a particular way, dressing in a particular way, speaking in a particular way, and you ask them, why are you speaking like this? Why are you dressing like this? And they will tell you that they have a role model that they're imitating. So what we like and dislike in our lives, whether it's small things like the food that we eat and the dress that we have, or even bigger things, go back to who we imitate, who we take as a role model. When Frozen came out, all the little girls wanted to be like Elsa. And what was the thing that you can see in their behavior, in their character, right? They now like to dress in a particular way. Their likes and dislikes was defined by Elsa, was defined by Frozen. And this is very, very important. This is how deep role models have an effect on us. I mean, just these first 3 points that I mentioned is amazing. Just think about it. That if you want to sit down and ponder upon what kind of goal I need to have in my life, how to motivate it to have this goal, and what I should like and dislike in order to get to the goal, right? It'll take you weeks and months to come up with conclusion. But were you to have a role model, very quickly, right? Your goal will be defined, you'll be motivated to achieve this goal, and your likes and dislikes will be completely in line with that path and that journey that we need to take. More than that, the fourth impact of role models in our behavior. Our behavior changes according to our role model. Our behavior and attitude in different spectrum of our lives. There are studies, for example, of minority schools in the US that had pupils not doing very well at school. They didn't really care about their academic growth, their homework and their studies. And there's a research that was done where they brought in a black female successful career successful person. And she came to the school and she spent some time with the students. And they saw that within a couple of weeks, students were taking their studies very seriously. They were doing their homework. They were ready to study. What happened? What happened was that they found a role model. So role model really impacts behavior. In the US, when Angelina Jolie, the actor, went and adopted a few kids from Africa, if you remember, studies say that that year, adopting children in the US doubled. The number of people who are adopting children doubled in that year. People follow role models. Behavior is impacted by role models. 5. Role models create a social identity. When we have role models within the community, right, they build in us an identity of where we belong. And the greater the role model, the greater pride we have in that identity. If you have a role model within the community, your feeling towards this community becomes greater. If we had a role model from the Pakistani background, you feel proud to be a Pakistani because of that role model. It increases our social identity. And social identity is very important. Especially today when we live in Canada and the whole conversation of integration comes up. And we want to protect our values, we want to protect our principles. We require social identity. We require us to have a very strong social identity. Where do you build social identity? One of the ways that social identity is built is through role models. If you have individuals within communities who have been successful and we take them as role models, that increases in us a sense of belonging to this community. A sense of identifying with a particular community. How does this happen? Through modeling. And the last impact that I want to talk about, the sixth impact, is to do with difficult moments. When we go through difficulties, stress, hardship, one of the ways to overcome those is through modeling. If you have a role model that went through difficult moments, and this role model overcame those difficult moments, it inspires to do the same. One of the reasons why Malala was portrayed as a role model at the United Nations was because they wanted girls to overcome the challenge of education and go into education. How do you promote all these girls who are going through a lot of hardship to go towards education? You bring about a role model for them. And they found this girl who went through a hardship and now can be a role model. All it took was, here you go. That's a role model for you. And suddenly you find a growth in people who are ready to overcome difficulties for education. Isn't it fascinating? Isn't it amazing how role models can really change a person? And I've given you loads of different examples from today's world of how people are introduced as role models, or people take up the position of role models in our lives, and how deep this impact can be. How fundamental this impact can be. From young children who are going to dress up like Elsa, to youths that are going to be wanting to be like Elon Musk, and to adults. So wide spectrum just through modeling. And so we cannot take this topic lightly. We cannot take this discussion lightly. As a community, as parents, as individuals, we need to go home and think about this. Do we have role models? If we do we have the right role models? What have we done as parents for our children, as a community for our members, and for ourselves? Have we taken the right role models? Have we used this concept of modeling to be able to channel our motivation, our direction, our identity, and achieve success? Because it is a shortcut towards success. It is a shortcut towards self-development. And you find our beautiful religion, Islam, talks about role model as well. Because it understands that as human beings, these impacts are real. And therefore, Islam also has to introduce role models. Islam also talks about role models. The Quran talks about role models in multiple places, not just one place, in many places. In fact, you could say one of the reasons why we have so many stories in the Holy Quran is because we want to introduce role models. Allah wants to tell you that, look, these are the people that you should be aspiring to be like. Prophet Musa and Prophet Ibrahim and Prophet Sulaiman. These are role models for you. The reason why I'm telling you all these stories in the Quran is that when you look at them, you feel like being like them. You understand your objective, you get motivated, you get inspired. And in many verses, the Quran specifically talks about different role models. And so inshallah today, in the last few minutes that I have, I'd like to talk about one passage in the Quran that talks specifically about a role model. So I will analyze this story, and we'll carry on tomorrow talking about this idea of role modeling. So if those who have a Quran on you, or if you have a phone on you, then open Surah Ahzab, chapter 33, verse number 9. In Surah Ahzab, chapter 33, verse 9, the Holy Quran begins the story of the Battle of Khandaq. The Battle of Ahzab, or the Battle of Khandaq. It's a very, very beautiful story. A very interesting story. So, just briefly before I go into the verse of the Quran, in this story, it's after the Battle of Badr and after the Battle of Uhud, right? The Prophet and the believers received the news that the enemy has gathered its biggest forces. It has gone to different places and joined forces with other people, and now has gathered an army, huge army, to come and attack Medina. And the people of Medina and the commanders and the Prophet decide that we don't have a choice. We can't go out and fight them. And also we can't allow them to come into Medina. They'll be causing a havoc. So they decide, through the different advice that they receive, to dig a trench at the entrance of Medina, so that if the army were to come, they will be stopped. And perhaps a group of them might be able to come and overcome this trench, but we can fight them in small groups. We can't fight them in big groups. So great idea. And now picture the scene where the army is now coming. So the Quran says that إِذْ جَاءُكُم مِّن فَوْقِكُمْ وَمِنْ أَسْفَلٍ مِّنْكُمْ. Right? Remember, so يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا اذْكُرُوا نِعْمَةَ اللَّهِ. Remember when the blessings of Allah came. It's an introduction of the whole summary of the Ahzab that's coming, the army that's coming. And Allah describes it as the enemy coming from on top of you, right? Min fawqikum wa min asfalikum, and from below you, right? And what happens? وَإِذَا زَاغَتِ الْأَبْصَارِ وَبَلَغَتِ الْقُلُوبُ الْحَنَاجِرِ. Your eyes start rolling. You just cannot believe at the size of this army. Huge army. And وَبَلَغَتِ الْقُلُوبُ, your heart reaches your throat. You think you're dead. Right? This is the description of the Quran. So you at this moment you're thinking, that's it, we're done, we're doomed. But this is the end of us, right? Your heart is in your throat. وَتَظُنُّونَ بِاللَّهِ الظُّنُونَ. And you start thinking things about Allah. That Allah, you betrayed us, you left us alone. They start having negative thoughts towards Allah. هُنَالِكَ ابْتُلِيَ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ وَزُلْزِلُوا زِلْزَالًا شَدِيدًا. It is here that the believers were tried, a very difficult trial. They were shaken. Zilzal is to be shaken. In fact, the sunnah of the Quran, the sunnah of Allah, that the believers will always be tried. The believers will be tested. We should never think that, Alhamdulillah, it's the month of Ramadan, I've begun my journey of spirituality, I'm a good believer, that's it. Life's going to be hunky-dory. No. The sunnah of Allah is that we are tested, not any test. Right? We're tested very difficult tests. And so we should be ready for the test. The question is, how can we be ready for this test? Look what the Quran says. So over here, the Quran says that the believers were tested, a very difficult test. It was difficult. A huge army coming to attack hometown, right? Medina is right here. They're right at our doorstep. It's a very difficult test. And so over here, the Quran now begins to talk about the action of one group of people. وَإِذْ يَقُولُ الْمُنَافِقُونَ وَالَّذِينَ فِي قُلُوبِهِمْ مَرَضٌ مَا وَعَدَنَا اللَّهُ وَرَسُولُهُ. The hypocrites and those who had weakness of faith, they had a marid in their heart, there were illness in their heart, they had weakness of faith, right? What is their reaction to this situation? Okay? Now that you are tested, now that the believers are tested, what is the reaction of these people? These people who are munafiq, they were hypocrites, or there were people who had marad in their heart, they had weakness of faith. What do they say? مَا وَعَدَنَا اللَّهُ وَرَسُولُهُ إِلَّا غُرُورًا. That Allah and the Prophet has not promised us anything except deceit. We were fooled. Why? Because the Prophet before this had told us we would be victorious. We had been promised victory. But now I can see this army coming to destroying us. The Prophet was just joking around. We were just, forget it, man, we're gone. This is the state that they were in. They saw this army, they were like, we were deceived. And so they started going back to Medina and causing people to abandon the fight, to go back home. And they would come up with excuse, and the Quran talks about how they would behave and tell the Prophet, Prophet, I need to go back home, I've got this and that happening, my family's in danger. And they would cause problem for the Prophet from inside. From here onwards, I'm going to skip because it's going to be iftar time very soon, or namaz time very soon. the Quran described over a page what these weak believers and these hypocrites were doing. And Allah rebukes them. How could you think these things? How could you do these things? Did we not promise you victory? What is this weakness that you're showing? Yes? And then, in the next page, the Quran now wants to tell us the reaction of the believers. So now that the Quran told us the reaction of the munafiqeen and those who have marad in their qalb, the Quran now wants to tell, okay, what was the reaction of the believers? The true believers, how do they believe? But before this, before Allah tells us the reaction of the believers, Allah tells us one important principle. One important point. What is this point? Verse number 21. لَقَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ فِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ. Indeed, for you, there is in the Messenger of Allah an uswa, a role model. Subhanallah. In other words, that which was a distinguishing factor between the first group of people, those who were hypocrites and those who had marad, and the way they dealt with the situation, and they showed weakness in that situation, and the believers were different to that, was the fact that this principle wasn't met. They didn't take the Prophet as a role model. Had you taken, O believers, the Prophet as a role model, if you had seen him in that situation, you wouldn't have shown weakness. You would know what the objective is. You would be motivated towards achieving success. Having the Prophet as role model would have changed your behavior from that state of weakness to a state of being a true believer and a true follower. And this is a very big lesson for us. That we go through challenges, we go through difficult moments, whether it's illness, whether it's family loss, whether it's financial crisis, whether it's depression and mental health. Believers are shaken, believers are tried. One of the things that ensures that we show strength, one of the things that ensures that we remain on the path and achieve success and are able to use difficult moments as a ladder towards success is by having the Prophet as a role model for us. لَقَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ فِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ. Indeed, in the Prophet, there is a role model for you. And this is really beautiful. This is really important. Now we need to go and think about what that means really for us. What does it mean for us to take the Prophet as a role model? To think that we can imitate the Prophet. To think that we can be like the Prophet. Remember the 6 impacts that we talk about. All 6 of those impacts that we talked about, you can apply them with the Prophet. And so we need to go home and think about this. And how the Prophet is a role model for us. One more thing. I'll leave you with a question. This verse carries on. The verse doesn't end over here. I only read to you a part of the verse. لَقَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ فِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ. It's part of the verse. For tomorrow, we're going to be talking about the rest of the verse. And so as a question to you, and as a homework for you, is to go and read the rest of the verse and to think about it. Because interestingly, not everybody can take the Prophet as a role model. There is a condition to take the Prophet as a role model. And that condition is mentioned in this verse. So to summarize, as we're approaching the time of Adhan, we talked about role modeling. We talked about how important it is for us to have role models in our lives. And we said that role models have 6 impacts. perhaps more, but 6 that we mentioned today. Role models define for us our goal, because they're a manifestation of what success is for us, where I want to go. Role models motivate us to reach there. If he could do it, I can. I want to be like him. That drives me to do certain things, to behave in a particular way, to go and become like him. Role models for us, in more than just creating a goal and motivating us, shapes our likes and dislikes. What we like in our lives, what we don't like, is defined by our role model. From small things like the way we dress and what we eat, to even bigger things what we like in our lives. And I leave you to think about the things that we like and how role models impact us. Role models also change our behavior and impact what we do. They also change our social identity and build for us an affinity to a particular community, build for us an identity that preserves our values and principles. And lastly, they help us through difficult moments. If role models have been through difficult moments and have gone through them, we are motivated to go through them as well and achieve success through that. And we saw how in the story of the Battle of Ahzab, or the Battle of Khandaq, how the Quran describes that very difficult moment when the enemy comes and attacks in that large number. And how different people reacted differently to the situation. People react differently in times of difficulties. And we saw that between the two descriptions of those who were hypocrites or who had weakness of faith and those who had true faith, there's one criteria and one important point that the Quran mentions, and that is that the Prophet was a role model for the believers. But there's a condition to it. Inshallah, we'll talk about it tomorrow. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He grants us the ability to take the Prophet as a role model and to be amongst him, inshallah, in this world and the hereafter. With a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad.